moment. No one's perfect, but at any given moment, draw yourself back in, just like give yourself a mental little slap. Hang on a sec. What are we doing here? Let's go again. Hard if you've got an entertaining client who really get you lives like that, but just draw yourself back in. I've got a client I train. He's my 6:30 guy, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Super charismatic, and tells a good story. It's very easy for him to try to knock you off, and then all of a sudden you've only done like 10 sets of work in the hour. And it's like one time he came in. Do you remember when Will Smith delivered that slap to Chris Rock?
Mm-hmm.
And then like 2 sets into the workout, he said, have you seen what Will Smith did? I said, no. He goes, well, check this out, And I was like, Ross, and we lost about a good 15 minutes of session because he's going, I go, hang on a minute. Yes, just put the phone away, man. Draw yourself back into it. That's an extreme example of someone giving you something which just knocks you off. But at the end of the day, he's paying for the hour. So I had to draw myself back in, and we stayed extra that day. But it would have been very easy to just like roll around and do nothing for the hour because of the shock of that.
That's really
Still.
interesting because different trainers are different. I've
Mm-hmm.
like worked alongside so many. Some people like if we talk about the spectrum of training to yapping,
Yep.
right? And some trainers are a little bit more comfortable on the yapping spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and some trainers are like definitely more comfortable on the training end of the spectrum. Where would you place yourself in that sort of like?
I've got to be honest. The reason it's a pet peeve is because I love a yap. I do love that. I am that guy, So I'm looking over there thinking, okay, I have been that guy who's been completely distracted, and they walk out of there having done not enough work in a session. And now I look over and I see it happening, thinking, okay, that might have been me 20 years ago. Obviously, I've been trained for a very long time. So now it's a pet peeve when I see people doing probably what I used to do. So on the training yapping spectrum, I'm probably closer to training because I literally draw myself back from the yap to make sure they get something done out of every session. Otherwise, before you know it, you've been training for a block or a few weeks, and the clients got no tangible result because there was too much yap.
How much do you think like so them not getting a result, right? Obviously, the point of us working with them is that there's some sort of physiological adaptation occurring. There's some degree of behavioral adaptation occurring. We've made them better in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have seen cases where like very negligible amount of physiological adaptation has occurred,
Mm-hmm.
and arguably almost no behavioral adaptation has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
But that client has continued to work with that trainer for maybe years.
Yeah.
Um, and there's always that argument of, well, if the client sees that they're getting value, then what's the issue, right? And
Mm.
the trainer's kind of like happily kind of going along with it. You obviously maybe feel, oh, I've got some like professional pride here.
Yeah.
I want to see an outcome from the work that I do. I don't want to just turn up and it's a fun yap that we're having.
Mm.
Um, but it is a thing. Like, how much do you think that's a bad thing that somebody's just having a yap? They're happy to continue paying for the sessions.
Sooner or later, it will catch up with you. I used to work for a company. Should I name them? Is we recording?
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, I used to work for a company called Matt Roberts Personal Training,
Right, right.
in central London, and it was probably between early 2000,
Yeah.
late up for about 15 years, the leading personal training company
Hmm.
in the UK, right? And there were lots of clients who were in there who were doing exactly what you just described. They'd turn up, and it made them feel good. And you could argue there wasn't a physiological adaptation.
For sure.
You could argue that, but they kept coming, year after year, and you know they were happy. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a good thing. But my point is, as a trainer who's conscientious, if that's who you've got, fine. But you should have at the back of your mind something which is they can hang their hat on, something they can look back on and say, yes, I did this with that person. It doesn't have to be much, but the trainer should make sure that on top of the value they're getting in just turning up and having a good time, they've got something they can say, yes, with that person, I achieved this. It doesn't have to be much, but if the trainer goes completely into what the client's thinking, yeah, that was a good session, we didn't achieve much, but it's all good, then you're soon lost. Because at some point it'll catch up with you and
I
then you're tired.
I have really like so I'm similar to you, and that is a pet peeve of mine as well. Um, I have clients that there's a lot of yapping that goes on for sure. Even I can think of the most extreme one where a majority of our session is yapping, right? And I still have my eye on whether we're progressing in a particular exercise or not. I know that that person is there predominantly for the yap,
Mm.
and she knows that I'm there predominantly for the training, and so we meet each other in the middle.
Yeah.
And but somebody has to be there, like still focusing on, are we progressing forward?
Exactly.
And I've said this before, most of the time, most trainers, like almost all of them, do care about outcomes. They do actually want to see their clients get better in whichever way that they do get better. But I have come across like one or two where they're happy for their clients to come in and they're basically a paid friend and they have this sort of yappy sort of session on the gym floor, that and what you said there about it catches up with you.
Yeah.
And that's what's really interesting I've observed about these individuals is they're always looking for new clients and they are wondering why, and they take it very personally when their client leaves, and because they think, oh, that person, we were getting along so well, we were friends, they should have been loyal to me. And it's just like they were. It's just that you weren't loyal to them because they came to you with an outcome in mind, with like looking for support in a particular thing, and you didn't deliver that thing. And they liked you so much that they didn't want to have the confrontation to say, look, you're just not helping me in the way I need help, but we're cool. I'm just going to stop.
Yeah, exactly. You got to remember what's the original reason they came in, and are you nudging them towards that, even if it's a little bit? Because when they eventually leave, I mean, you know, I've trained people for years and years, like decades, generational as well. I've trained, you know, gentleman I train now, I used to train his mum back in years and years ago. So, but when they look back and look at their time with you, what will they say about it? Will they be able to say, I achieved this?
Yeah.
If they can't say that at all about anything, then perhaps you're not doing your job as best as you could. I won't say you haven't done your job because they kept coming and they got a result, you know, in terms of whatever that was going to be. But what was the original reason they came to you? And are you nudging towards that in some way every time you see them? On top of the fact they're having a good time, on top of the fact that you're getting them moving where they otherwise might not have done. And all of that's good, but that's basic. Are you nudging them slowly but surely towards the original goal they walked in for, or the goal that you've, you know, re-established? You know, are you constantly asking a question every now and again? What are we driving for now? You know, it's we've just gone through, you know, what I call the 2nd January, you know, the start of September, and I always ask around about this time of year, what are we going to push for between now and the end of the year? No matter who I'm training, just to say, oh, okay, you know, just so that you're not just spinning that wheel, just so you know, what are we focusing on now? And some clients roll their eyes, you know, they just say, well, you know, I said, no. And deep down, they all like it. They do. They you know, oh, he's focused. He's thinking about what we're doing. And then they see whatever comes back. I make sure I push that into the sessions, you know, subtly, sometimes not so subtle. You know, I change what their directions are for outside the session. I see people between 1 and 3 times a week. You know, clearly I need to get them doing something outside of the session. So what their answer is depends on, you know, what their response is, informs what I ask them to do, either nutritionally or regarding their movement. So my clients all know, hopefully, that I'm always thinking about what they're doing in their goal, on top of the fact that hopefully they're having a really good time in session. And I think that's important. So if I catch myself drifting off or being, you know, sidetracked by their excellent chat, you know, I quickly just like, come on, get back in there. And then when I see it happening across the room, then I sort of, you know, either actually roll my eyes or, you know, you know, in there roll my eyes, and I'm thinking, then I catch myself and don't be so judgmental. That probably used to be you, and it is you on a bad day. But you know, if you're asking for a pet peeve, that is it. Because I think
yeah, it's definitely a it's a curious one, because sometimes in the back of your mind you're like, you've paid for this session and you've signed up to this for a particular outcome, and coming to the session and then immediately looking to turn it into like more of a conversation than a training session. What the psychology of that has always, I can see it in some cases where I'm like, I kind of get what's going on here. You've become very comfortable with me. You're looking forward to the chat that we're going to have. I also think that we're in a position of trust where someone's literally said, oh, great, I don't have any accountability here. I'm going to put it straight onto you. And so their assumption is we're always going to keep an eye on that. We're always going to keep an eye on making sure that the training is happening. And so I can relate, like you saying it's a pet peeve, is because the person has trusted you, the trainer, to make sure that that is going to happen. And they are not responsible for it, as much as we would maybe like for some of them to take a little bit more accountability, a little bit more responsibility around it. You don't have that same privilege. You have to kind of be like, right, did we get the work done that we needed to get done within this sort of general period of time? Not necessarily. There's some sessions where it's kind of like you can see the person just needs a bit of a yap today.
Yeah.
That's cool. We're not going to push it too hard.
And then, of course, unless you're training at the elite level, you're dealing with general population, then life comes into it too.
Yeah.
You know, has that person had a really, really stressful week? You know, did they get any sleep last night? Were they up? You know, had been kept up by a youngster in a home? So you might not be able to deliver everything that you plan to deliver in that hour, but did you get the maximum possible on the day? You know, did we get people sometimes at the end of the session, people say, oh no, that wasn't a good one, was it? Or, you know, I could have done more today. I said, did you give everything that you could have done in that particular like session? The answer is yes, and that's a win. But it's when they come in and they could have done more, but they didn't for an external reason. Then it's like, oh, yeah, we need to do better. And that's what I'm looking for. Get the most you can out of every possible session, both from trainer and client, and you'll nudge towards where you want to be.
I think you mentioned that you mostly deal with parents and in particular dads, right?
Mm.
So what we generally know, anybody who's a parent and anybody who's not a parent even, we know that their lives are quite stressful. We know that their sleep is often disrupted. And we know that it's really difficult to make plans with them because anything can happen at any moment where they have to drop everything and suddenly like respond to a situation.
Mm.
That must be a challenging group to work with when you're trying to create some sort of structure and routine towards a health outcome. How have you found dealing with that?
Challenging, but that's why I do it. In terms of my, if you like, online coaching program, I focus on guys, dads, but realistically any gentleman who's time poor, who has lost, their way in terms of eating what they need to eat to be the shape and have the energy levels they want, doesn't have any routine, doesn't have a system of training, and it's challenging, but I found that I can make the most impact with that sort of person because of the people I've trained in the past and because of my own experience. And it's giving people real advice which suits their current situation. So
What's an example of real advice?
so if you look at generic advice, it's get 8 hours sleep. You've got to strive to get 8 hours sleep for optimum. That's optimum for you. Try and make sure you do something to get your stress levels down. Make sure that you're getting some daylight when you're faced nice and early between the hours of this and this. And actually, if you're someone who's struggling with a youngster in house, working, you're stressed, that doesn't help. You've got zero chance of getting 7 hours of sleep regularly. You've got zero chance of going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time. So these guys need some advice which is relevant to them, which can take them from where they are one notch better to where they want to be.
What kind of advice have you given to someone?
Well, for example, if you are that guy, how can you improve your sleep? What can you do? Something like, okay, well, can you add a 15-minute nap in somewhere? Can you aim to avoid something which will keep you up longer when you don't have to? So look at I've got 1,000 suggestions in my head. I'm trying to think about one which is more relevant. Supposing you know that your sleep is going to be disrupted.
I think sleep is a good example to work with, yeah.
But you also know that you're binge watching a Netflix documentary and you just want to squeeze one more episode in.
Guilty as charged.
Okay, that's a lot of people, right? And these programs are designed to leave you on a cliffhanger, just squeeze one more in. Thinking of Game of Thrones back in the day. And 24, for those that old enough to remember that. And then you have to watch the next one. What you do in advance, you say, I'm going to watch, name your number, 1 episode of this or 2 episodes of this, and then I'm going to go to sleep. Because often, if you maximize what you can do, it minimizes the inverted commas damage that your broken sleep is going to get. And so if you know that you're going to get a broken sleep there, then say, I'm going to watch 2 episodes of what I'm going to watch, and then I'm going to go to sleep. I know I'm going to get woken at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. So I'm not going to watch 3 episodes of that. I'm going to watch 2. I'm going to maximize going to bed at this time.
Have you found, like, obviously you've given that advice, what's been the actual outcome of it? Like, have people actually made that agreement and then been like, yeah, I actually did stick to that and that has helped improve things?
What I do is I don't just give the advice, I ask the questions and find out where to push the buttons. So I say, right then, okay, so we know you're going to get woken up X times. So talk to me about your evening and where can we make a positive game? And it might be that, okay, I do love to like watch X, Y, Z, and I could probably like cut half an hour at the end of that. Can we do that? Yeah, I probably can. Okay, let's do that. Let's only watch 2 episodes instead of 3, and let's try that for a week and see what happens. It might not be about the TV. It could be, okay, I do love a coffee, and I drink coffee all the way up to about 4 p.m. I'm not going to go into the half-life of coffee and the effects it has, but okay, is it possible for you to have your last coffee at 1 p.m? Yeah, I can do that. Easy. All right, let's try that and see if it makes a difference. So you find out what the lever is in that person's life rather than just say, you've got to get 8 hours sleep and that's going to happen. So think of one of the 15 things you can do leading up to the point of good sleep, which you can actually physically do without too much pain in that person's life to make a difference. You start pushing on levers and before you know it, they're ready an improvement. It doesn't take much. It doesn't have to be the textbook response. Like, there's loads of these. Like, I'm getting dehydrated. Oh, drink 3 liters of water a day. Okay, well, all right. But I'm already getting up in the night to go for a pee because, I'm over 45 years old.
For sure.
Right? So drinking 3 liters of water is going to make me get a pee more now. Okay, so what are we going to do in that situation? Okay, to get this person hydrated. There are lots of things you can do, but it's not just about the obvious answer. And so when it comes to working with this particular demographic, I'm going to listen to what they're doing now and use the experience I've got over a number of years to actually push on levers which will make a difference to this person and make their life better without just, saying them, do everything now and turn yourself into Superman.
And so far, a lot of times when you've had this analysis with someone, then you've pinpointed where they can make these subtle adjustments, and they've followed through.
Yeah, people do because it comes from them.
Amazing.
And what people assume, and people will always assume this, is that when they're talking to somebody like me or you, that we're going to tell them what to do. They go to a coach, they're going to tell us what to do and it's going to be all right. No, but in reality, what happens is a coach, an experienced coach, is going to ask the questions that you're going to answer so that you can make the decisions about which parts of your life you're going to change for an improvement. And it might be that the coach asks questions that you didn't even think about. It might be that you knew the answers all along, but just needed somebody to sort of bring them out and, provide that feedback loop so that you get it done. It might be, there's a lot of things, but the answer always comes from the person. It's quite rare that I'm coming with a suggestion that they'd never heard of before. Never. I mean, information is free, Look at it. It's been free for a long time, lad. It's a long time since Encyclopedia Britannica was there on the shelves and people selling it that. Only people of a certain age will know what I'm talking about. But these days, you can get an answer to pretty much anything in seconds on your phone.
Good old Mount Vesuvius.
There you go. And so the answers are there. The information is there. But what isn't there is the ability to apply an answer which will work for you and make it work in the context of your life. And that's where a coach and a conversation with somebody who's spoken with a lot of people in your situation can help you.
I think it's really helpful for anybody to hear that a strategy was put into place and then it actually worked. Like other people actually okay, they did this thing or they had that style of conversation and they went away and it actually worked for them. And that gives it a lot of power because we like to, it's the same thing as like checking a product on Amazon. The first thing you do is you go check the reviews.
Yeah.
You don't trust the salesy script of the person putting the product up there. You want to tell me that's the greatest thing in the world. I want to know what the people that actually bought it thought of it. And so if you're working with people and you're working with them in a particular way, and we're actually getting to observe that they went away and they were actually able to make that change in their behavior that has helped them with like managing their sleep and managing other things, like that has so much more power to it than, like you said, just the general advice. Like, yeah, we all know 8 hours of sleep. We all know we need to stay hydrated. We all know we should do some exercise. We don't do it for a variety of different reasons. And to know that there's people like us, not the personal trainer or the fitness guy, who everyone assumes is not human and just gets everything right all the time. But that's a separate topic.
Yeah.
That there's real people that are actually like, okay, yeah, we asked this person to like just watch one less episode and they actually did it.
Yeah.
That means that maybe I can make that agreement with myself and maybe I can do that as well. And I am one of those people. I do like watch Netflix at night. It does go on to the next episode and I'm, making for the first time in my entire life, I'm 39 years old. And this is the first time in my entire life I'm being adult about sleep, right? I've never bothered with it. I've just been like, whatever. If I get 4 hours sleep, I get 4 hours sleep. I'll just like firm it through the next day. And it's really impacting me now at this stage of my life. And it probably has done for a long time. I've just gaslighted myself into thinking I'm okay. But actually saying, yeah, do you know what? I will turn this off now and I will go to sleep. Because that's going to make such a difference to how things are going to go for me tomorrow and the day after that. Sleep is such a hugely important thing. I don't call people out on stuff too much, but like I can quietly observe and kind of be like, yeah, I can see what you're doing and what you're not doing, and what you're really giving attention to and what you're really not giving attention to. And generally, I tend to assess when I think it's likely that I'm going to be able to have an open conversation with that person, and when they're maybe going to have some barriers up, and it's just like, okay, here's 4 different conversations that we could have that would have some change for you. Here's 3 that I reckon you'd be open to talking about, and here's 1 that I think you're going to get a bit defensive about, so I'm just going to focus on these 3 for now. And I'll let that one just continue running in the background, and that's sabotaging your health, but we're not going to do anything about that right now. And I want to circle back around once you've seen that you've made some positive changes for yourself in these 3 areas, and it's like, let's talk about this one now. And I can't say for certain, it very much depends on the individual. are they going to be open to having that conversation? And everybody wants better sleep for sure. But how much do people want to give up their coping mechanisms and their vices that are maybe acting as a barrier to improving their health? So it's like, how much do I want to reduce my alcohol consumption? How much do I want to stop doing lines on the weekend when I go out with my mates?
Another big, yeah.
How much do I want to, stop eating packets of crisps with my lunch and my Tesco meal deal? Because it's not, the real reasons as to why people do these things are not the ones that we acknowledge up front.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's I know it's cheesy, but focusing on your inverted commas why is something that most people sort of talk about. But when you really, really do it, and why are you trying to fill in the blank, lose weight, get lean, get bigger, get stronger? What's the real reason? And then you look at that through the lens of what are you doing that's stopping getting there, and what you prepared to sort of give and take on. And it's a case of you don't have to, if you're a dad and you want to lose your belly and get leaner and stronger and fitter and sleep better and raise up your energy levels, but you don't want to stop drinking alcohol, that's fine. But and it's possible, of course, but it's also true, you've got to be honest and say, if you carry on drinking, say, 2 glasses of wine per evening and then 6 or 7 pints of a weekend per day, can you do that and expect to get the results you're looking for? Probably not. It's going to be a lot harder. So what are you prepared to do with your alcohol intake, not just in terms of what you're drinking, but how you're drinking it, in order to make your goal easier? And so if you line up all the things which are pushing you away from your goal and look at them through the lens of, in the context of what you actually want to do, your why. It sounds harsh, but how much do you want it? How important is your why compared to the life you're living now? And once you have that conversation, and I have it very early with all of my clients, both in person and online, they can start to say, well, actually, yeah, I am prepared to do this in order to do this. I think I can do this in order to do that. I don't want to give up that because I really look forward to that. And you say, fair enough, okay, let's work with that. But you have that honest conversation right at the start, and then you keep coming back to that. Are we doing this? And if we're not, then accept it. Don't judge, but realize it's going to take longer to get to where you want to be. And if they're okay with that, that's fine. That's what we work with. But keeping the why you're doing something at the forefront of your mind is a really good motivator to, dial down the behaviors that are pushing you away.
I think that's super important. And admittedly, I can become quite relaxed with people's why, especially people. I mean, most of my clients I've been working with for like maybe 5 years on average, and they probably don't even remember their original why, right? And I've likely taken them down roads that they weren't even planning to go, and now they're just in it. It's like, we're doing handstands now. What?
Why are we doing handstands?
I just told you my knee hurt, mate. Like, what so we've probably gone so far past the point of no return that we can't even see what it looks like anymore. But the person who let's say they have that conversation with you, and like we now have understood our why. We've understood that there's some what's the word, adjustments that like we're planning to make and implement, right? And so I've gone into this conversation with you, IO, with the most serious intention, and then we get going and life is happening. And do you know what? I'm just not doing this thing that I said I'd agreed to do with you, even though we had this very long conversation. And you, being the great accountable coach that you are, have planned in opportunities for us to circle back and reinforce our whys. And great, we're doing that. And I'm still very sincere. But like 3 months have passed by now, and I actually haven't made any meaningful changes to how I behave. And that's, of course, impacting the physical results that I'm seeing. But I'm still here, I'm still turning up. But by now, maybe I'm starting to be a little bit like I'm venting a little bit. I'm getting a bit moody and bitter about the whole thing, and starting to demonstrate some resentfulness and whatever else not. Where are you now at with that person?
Well, this is where regular conversation becomes really important. And this is what I was talking about, in terms of not spinning wheels and just turning up. Because if you get to, did you say 3 months?
As an example.
As an example, and you're having that conversation, at 1 month, we would have, if you're doing what I said you should have been doing, you would have had the conversation. So 4 weeks is enough to say, okay, well, what can we do to get closer to where we want to be? Because it's entirely possible you can get to 3 months and nothing's happened. It happens. Life takes over and you're doing your best and things happening. But you've got to address that earlier. And at 1 month, you say, right, okay, what can we do to make things 1% better? 2 months. What can we do to make 3 months? So, but if you do get to 3 months and nothing's happened and the frustration, the bitterness is creeping in, the conversation is an honest one. Okay, what can we do to push us close to the goal? What are we doing? What are we not doing? And you might get, if someone open their heart and it all comes out, I can't do it because, or they feel like a failure. It's fine. We're human beings. A good coach isn't a judge. A good coach is trying to get the best possible outcome for this person. And if they can't get the outcome that they want because, this is the reason, a good coach or just good human is going to help them try and make 1% change for the better in any one of the areas they can. I believe you can always do a little bit better. And it might be a case of expectation management. Maybe you promised, or they thought they were going to have, they look like The Rock after 12 weeks when they came in looking like Charlie Chaplin, and it's not happening. So maybe a conversation needs to happen along the way or at that point. If we carry on and we make these changes, 1%, you can expect to be here if you stick to those. And then I said, well, that's not very good. That's what we're doing. Be honest and say, this is what our expectations are, if we can do this. Frustration often comes from people expecting to be somewhere which was unrealistic in the first place. And this is where me sitting here now as a coach who's been a coach since 1998, that's 25 years plus, compared to me 2 years in.
How old are you, Julian?
47.
There you go. You see, so yeah. So I finished my degree in 98, you see. And so I've been doing this quite a while. And so 2 years out, now you asked me that question, if someone comes to you and they haven't achieved anything after 3 months, I'd be like, well, you sit them down, you have a conversation, you get them back on track. No, now it's like, okay, firstly, we wouldn't have got to 3 months because I would have had a conversation way earlier and spotted direction of travel. And if you do sit down and have that conversation, you're a lot more human, you're a lot more understanding, and it's a lot more, where can we go in order to make sure that in 1 month's time, we know exactly where we are now. What can we do? If the answer is absolutely nothing, then you go to one of my 9 lasting laws of leanness. I like a bit of alliteration.
All right.
Yeah, and one of them is the law of raw. And that's, are you ready, able, and willing to do what you say you want to do? The important one being able. If someone is moving house and they've just, changed their job and someone close to them has passed away, or, all these things which are massive life changes, you have to take that into account when it comes to making a huge change in their lifestyle and physique. I'm not saying you have to wait for the perfect moment before you start making changes, but if one of those things is going on and taking a lot of your energy, how much can you put into towards a change? You take that into account and you manage expectations accordingly. If something is going in someone's life which is preventing them from doing everything they want to do to get the changes they're looking for, take it into account. Maybe pause the program and say, okay, let's pause. Let's get through this, and I'll be here as a light touch person, touch base with me, but we'll stop what we're doing and we'll come back in a month's time and we'll restart when you've got more clear space and more, if you like, bandwidth. I hate that phrase, but I think it's appropriate to do what needs to be done.
Has that ever happened?
Yeah, of course.
You've had somebody pause and then...
Of course.
And did it help?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Sometimes you just say, let's shake hands, and I'll contact you, name a time, and maybe we'll talk about restarting. Life goes on, and it's you get more respect. You do if you actually say to someone, this isn't working right now. I think it will, but not right now. Stay in touch. The person comes back. They almost always do.
Listening to you and just thinking about lots of trainers that I've come across. And we're obviously just talking about pet peeves and characteristics of trainers, and having those conversations. One of the reasons why a lot of trainers might avoid having conversations about, checking, are we heading in the right direction? Are you living up to the agreement that we've kind of set for ourselves? Is the fear that, like, wait, this isn't going in the direction that we wanted it to go. You're not basically getting from this what you wanted to get from this. You're going to leave. I'm obviously going to be out of pocket. And the difference between that trainer and the trainer that is willing to have the conversation about, wait, hold on a minute, let's just check, have you actually been doing the things that we said we were going to do, is sincerity. And so when you are sincere in your approach towards the person you're working with, and you are sincerely engaged in the outcome, you are not thinking about whether you're going to lose their business or not. You're only really thinking about, are you helping them get the outcome that they came to get? And that's why those conversations work, and that's why another human being will respond to that conversation and actually engage with you with it, because they're sitting in front of someone that they can clearly tell actually cares enough to have this conversation. This isn't just about them holding on to a client.
Yeah.
So I am thinking about so many people here that I'm like, yeah, like if they were to try and have those conversations, the client already kind of figured out that this trainer isn't that invested. And we can go back to the sort of like Matt Roberts situation. And it's not just Matt Roberts, it's like there's so many places where people do have maybe fairly affluent clients where it's not such a dramatic financial investment for them. And they're just happy to have this person, like this service person within this aspect of their life. And it can become very yappy. And so they acknowledge that like, oh, I'm investing in my health, and so something's probably happening, but I'm not too fast. Actually, I'm very ambiguous about the actual outcome. And the trainer's kind of understanding that, this person's pretty ambiguous and easygoing about it, and therefore I don't have to work as hard. I don't have to have hard conversations with them. And I can kind of, this is a very chill scenario and I'm getting paid, right? And so that's borderline insincere. I don't know how you want, like maybe I'm being very nice about it there. And, I'll put my hands up and say there's definitely been times where I can say I didn't give 100% to someone at periods of time. There's times where I've maybe switched off, especially if you've been working with somebody for like 5 or 6 years. You're kind of like, oh, we've been kind of riding the friendship train here for the last 3 months. And then I'm like, I'll kick back into gear and be like, right, let's reestablish what the goals are and like where we're going. And I'll be very honest with them and say, look, that last year, I don't think we achieved anything. I think we can acknowledge that these things were happening in your life. But I'll be very transparent about where I feel like I've not done the job that I was supposed to do. And again, they will always respect me for being honest about it, and not just kind of putting the blame on them. I always try and look to where I'm accountable for what else could I have done in this situation? When should I have had that conversation? When should I have changed the program? When should I have, made more of an effort in various different regards? And I think it goes a long way with retention and the relationship you have with that person, and also just professional pride, because you want to see the outcome. I would like, I do watch others who maybe have had clients for a number of years, and maybe I even kind of know the client a little bit. And I'm like, you know, it is a weird one to be like, you're still paying this person. I wonder why. And I know it's because they always say the same thing. Like, I really like spending this time with this person. If I could, I would see this person more regularly. And in general, those clients, one of their strongest characteristics is loyalty. And so, and I think some trainers do play on that a little bit. Like, this person's not going to go anywhere. So if I don't necessarily work too hard, I won't lose them. Arguably, that's unfair.
Arguably. I mean, you, in that situation, clearly the client is getting some value from just turning up.
Sure.
But I do believe that it's very easy to fall into a trap of just floating along. They'll get a lot more if the trainer put in an assessment, have that conversation periodically to make sure they're getting more, and the client get more out of it, and everyone be happy, and the relationship be even stronger. It could be in a lot of cases so much better. And of course, at my old company, there were plenty of people who were doing it right, but in a company like that where it's not necessarily driven, well, I don't know what it's like now, but back then it wasn't necessarily driven to transformations. It's very easy to go and train a bunch of people who just come and these keep coming. Transformation type companies, you might not get that, but they might not stay as long. But they have their own issues in terms of whether they're going for the before and after, and looking after the after.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Like I'm going to touch on that, and I'm going to touch on Matt Roberts very briefly as well, because I've been a trainer for like 21, 22 years now. So Matt Roberts was a bit more prominent in the earlier part of my career.
Yeah.
And then obviously like faded out like, quite a while back. But it was one of the companies that I wouldn't have had an interaction with because I was too early in my career to really be dealing with them. I was on my own journey, right? How much was it to, like, on average, for a session with a Matt Roberts personal trainer?
A Matt Roberts personal trainer? Ooh, £100.
And like £100.
Hang on a minute, back then, £100 around about now. So back then it would have been like 70.
About 70. So, like, to put that into context, that's probably around about 120 to 150 right now.
Yeah.
Like, if we're talking about like inflation and the rest of it. So is it highly premium product, which means, and when you walk past a Matt Roberts studio, it would have been somewhere like Grosvenor Square, like Mayfair, Marylebone, like these types of places. So it generally had that sort of very, very, very affluent demographic. And yeah, I call them the unemployed rich. where they don't necessarily have a job, so they just like find ways to fill their day.
I never heard that phrase.
Because I've come from like Southeast London, in demographically one of the poorest areas of London,
Mm.
where for the longest time that literally in London had the cheapest housing. It wasn't very affluent at all, and we had a lot of unemployed people regularly at the gym day in day out. And to some for a period, I guess I was one of them,
Mm.
right? And so I've then gone to the other end of the spectrum, like to the most wealthiest area, and I've been in those gyms, and it was really interesting to me that the behavior of the people was exactly the same. They had the same intention with their day, and they were kind of just dossing about, looking to socialize in the gym. And the only difference you could really put with these people that I would have in the gym in the low income area versus the gym in the very high income area is just that one of them had money and the other didn't. But if you strip that away and just observe the human, they were acting and behaving and going about their day in the exact same manner. And
Wow.
even the timing of their day is when they come to the gym and when they leave, and it's all very much the same thing. So somewhere like Matt Roberts would have had a lot of the sort of like unemployed rich as well, and as well as a lot of like very busy, high stress job individuals too. So that's I mean, I don't know what happened to Matt Roberts' personal training. I'm going to guess it's like maybe it still exists, or you
Oh, it does, yeah.
yeah. But then if we're talking about a transformation gym in those areas that obviously became very, very popular, and like I'm going to guess is like the number one personal training gym in the world potentially, a gym called Ultimate Performance,
Mm.
who became super famous for these 12-week transformations that they were doing en masse. And I remember having quite a harsh judgment of them early on because I was like, yeah, these guys are going through these extreme measures, and yeah, I like what happens to them afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I talked to this guy who was running this gym, and I was trying to get a job at this gym, and I mentioned Ultimate Performance to him because I was like, yeah, like, are you guys like them? And he's like, well, hold on, I know the guy, I can't remember his name. Jean-Claude Vacassin, I think his name was, and he was the owner of W1 Personal Training. And I don't know if W1 Personal Training still exists, but and this guy was like a real, like, straight to the point, blunt, and he definitely gave me a few harsh words. Not about that particular topic, but he basically said, like, I know the guy that runs that place. And I know the trainers there. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about Ultimate Performance is, yes, they do put people through these really pretty harsh, rigorous 12-week transformations. But before all that starts, they already have a conversation with them at the beginning to help manage their expectations and say, we're only doing this for 12 weeks. After that, we're going to be like taking a completely different direction and changing the tempo.
Mm.
To basically, that's where the aftercare was. And that's the bit that a lot of us up on the outside didn't know about it. We just saw the 12-week transformations and we just assumed that it was kind of like, cool, we've got the picture now, that'll go into our marketing, we'll get the next lot. What I didn't know was that, yeah, they were actually setting it up so that that was just the initial period, and then there was more phases after that that would help direct them to a healthier place. I then later on learned more when I went to do my nutritionist certification, and it was an evidence-based one, so we had to basically, everything had to be backed up by research. And some of the research basically had indicated that people who had a more dramatic initial weight loss were more likely to stick to a longer-term weight loss plan than people who gradually took it slowly. And that was that was a paradigm shift, because it was like, as far as I was concerned, like you were going to have this massive rebound and it was going to be completely out of control. And actually, it turns out when studied, that wasn't the case. And so things started to sort of like line up a little bit for me. And from that point, I mean, we're talking about maybe 10 years ago, that's when my mind was at, and I'm starting to understand these things. I was like, I'm going to have a slightly less of a judgment about how other people are running their practices. Because really, I don't know these people and I don't know what their intentions are. I can maybe speak on the ones that I've worked alongside day in, day out for the last decade or 7 years or 5 years or whatever. And okay, I've got a bit more insight there. But as far as everyone else is concerned, it's like there might be a method to their way of doing things and their way of communicating things that I don't fully understand and appreciate. But yeah, the transformation gym thing, and I used to, my whole online business when I had it was built off of transformations.
Okay.
I stopped doing that for the reason that I didn't want to promote that anymore. I didn't want people to only focus on the external aspect of them, because most of mine was based on bodybuilding. And what I basically got to experience is I wasn't really putting people in a better place. On the surface, it looked that way. The moment it really hit for me was when someone's messaging me saying, they're looking to end their life, right? And I'm just like, whoa. And I remember, because I'm like in Spain at this point in time, right? I'm on holiday. I'm getting this message from a client of mine who's basically talking about ending their life. And if you were to see her, she looked amazing.
Yeah.
She had a great transformation. But she was in such a bad place. And it wasn't to do with the training or anything like that. There were many things happening in her life. And this wasn't the right path for her. And it made things worse. It made her magnify and zoom in on all of her insecurities. And I, at that time, hadn't really done my due diligence in that regard. And so now I've got this person who, instead of making things better, I've made it much worse. And whilst they're personally accountable for themselves, I was also accountable for how much I pushed for that result.
Yeah.
Everyone that I've worked with, in that sort of before and after prepping for a bodybuilding show, there's so much I would have done differently now looking back on it. And it's taking me up until probably like only this year have I started kind of being a bit more like, wait, maybe before and afters aren't the worst thing in the world. Because I'm having these conversations with some of you guys, and some of you guys are using the before and afters, but you're just doing it smarter than I did. Because you're layering those conversations, you're having those conversations at the beginning, you're managing the expectations, you're not making it all about the end result. And I think that's the bit that, looking back, I missed, because I was so focused on getting the wins, getting the placings, growing my own brand, and being seen as like a competent coach, because I had a lot of people doubting me at that time, so I had a chip on my shoulder for
improving yourself,
Yeah.
So, but that's just a sign of growth. If you're looking back at what you're doing 10 years ago and you're not a little bit embarrassed, or you're not looking at something and saying, I'll definitely change that, then you're not growing.
For sure.
That's what they say. So I'm looking back at things I did, and it's a similar thing, and a big part of what I'm doing now and what I've created now is a system, a plan, that when someone comes to me in the online space, I'm basing what I'm saying to this person, a question I'm asking, on everything which I've learned over the last X years. And so there are questions I'm asking which I would never have thought of asking back then. There are things I'm looking at and making people think about which are delving deeper than the transformation thing. And yes, everybody wants to look better than they do now, whatever better means for them. And so there will be a before and after. But the phrase after is something which is always at the forefront of my mind. And even though the research you just mentioned, which I hadn't heard, by the way, my anecdotal evidence is that in order for somebody to sustain a serious change over a long period of time, I'm talking about 5-10 years, it's better to get the things which get them there in place early and cement them. And it does mean, which is unfortunate for the likes of me, that change happens slower. And so my 12-week before and after for the average person I train isn't that dramatic. It really isn't. And I'm getting all the great comments, I feel great, I'm so much stronger, I can pick up, a little and without hurting my back, my trousers are falling off, but you look at the photos and they look, oh yeah, look a little bit,
not ready for Instagram just yet.
Not Instagram ready. No one's being impressed by Instagram. So it's very important that you build some context around it, and then as people carry on, I've leaned that legacy, which they carry on beyond the 12 weeks, and that's when, if you carry on with the habits that we've hopefully built, that you start actually getting to the stage where people are looking at you, even with a shirt on, and thinking, hang on a minute, But if you're going to get there in 12 weeks, despite the research you just cited, I'm saying that it's a rebound is real. The rebound is real.
The research was in obese patients, right? So they are a slightly different category than like the everyday person. For me, if I was to like go through a 12-week transformation, I'm going to rebound from that for sure.
Yeah.
And I have done many times, because I've done many 12-week transformations on myself. And yeah, slightly, I'm not walking around at 9% body fat.
I don't mind. It's like, the shirts will not be coming off in this particular episode.
Like, you kind of, I've had to go on a slightly different journey with like maybe addressing, again, going through those transformations myself, and then seeing what happened to me after, and then kind of being like, wait, so I, as a professional, with experience, with knowledge, with context, and struggling to maintain this kind of physique and leanness that I would create in a transformation, how can I then expect the everyday person to then be able to go through these processes and then maintain it afterwards? What things am I actually having to address within myself that I would then have to address within someone else to be like, why are you not able to sustain the change? And then what I ended up coming to was about the change itself and the value of the change. So, do we want to be at a healthy weight? Yes. Do we have to be 6% body fat? No. And why is it important for you to look that way? Why is it important for your abs to be visible? We know that there's an issue with having X amount of visceral fat or belly fat, right? And that being heavily correlated with poor health outcomes. But once we've reduced that and we can actually see you're in a healthy place and you're living your life well, the additional sacrifices that you now need to make that make your life worse.
The cost of getting lean.
Yeah.
There's an infographic I remember from, who put it up there? I think it's Precision Nutrition. They handled with the infographics, but one that sticks in my mind is the cost of getting lean.
Right.
And it showed, and it listed the lifestyle things you'd have to do to be.
I think I've seen
this,
it, yeah.
like this. And it's like they've got a lot of infographics, but that was a good one.
Yeah.
And it's actually freely available. You can just Google it and it'll just come up, on your phone. And it's really good. And it shows someone who looks looks pretty good. They show, there's someone who looks, like the average person walking around the street. There's someone who looks like The Rock, and what they have to do to look like that, maintain that 6% visible abs. And you're thinking, okay. And then you look at your lifestyle and, well, do I want to do that, and that? If the answer is no, then that's the cost of getting lean. If the answer is yes, then go for it. And then also realize that the person you see walking around like that isn't like that the whole year round, as you well know. They cycle. They don't always look like they do on stage. But I mean, again, it's about how you position yourself. So most of the guys who come to me actually say the words verbatim, I'm not interested in six-pack. And the reason they're talking to me is because there are loads of coaches out there who are going to get you to the six-pack. And these guys know that the likes of me isn't that interested in getting them there. I can get you there, of course I can, but they're not interested because they know the cost of getting lean, and they want someone who's going to help them, make their trousers fit better, feel comfortable naked, but without having to have that washboard, because they know they're going to have to get up to get there. And that's what I want to be. I'm trying to be a grown-up, sensible coach who's there for a specific person with a specific goal. Yeah, they want to be fit, strong, robust. They want to look good. They want to feel strong. They want to last longer, but they don't necessarily want to do the things or have someone encourage them to do the things they need to do to get that six-pack, because they know it's not sustainable and they know that they're not willing to pay the cost of getting that lean. And if you've got someone who's going to be honest with them from the start, I want to be that guy. And yeah, it does mean the results might take longer to get there, but they'll last longer.
They're not as sensational. Six-packs are massively overrated. It's ridiculous how overrated it is. And I think anyone who's ever had a six-pack can tell you that. Because it's like, okay, well, nothing changed. And if anything, I just feel small and weak.
Yeah, who cares?
I think hopefully we're starting to shift away from it a little bit. And I think that generation, even my generation and above, are really starting to value other things outside of just that silly aesthetic, the men's health aesthetic. And be a little bit more like, okay, well, how do I offset, longevity, something you mentioned earlier. How do I live quite long but with good quality life? How do I offset cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all these other kind of things? How do I maintain my ability to look after my family for a long enough period of time that they need me, right? And I think most dads, it's kind of that's their priority, their children and their family. And the biggest fear is that I'm not going to be able to provide for them. I'm not going to be able to look after them. I'm not going to be able to be there for them in the way that they need me. And my whole identity now is about that. And if I lose that, then I don't know who I am and I don't know what that means for me. And of course, everyone around you tells you, like, yeah, we care about you, we love you, and we'll be there for you no matter what. But as a man, deep down, like yourself, sure, they will, but there's always an expectation. And it's not an expectation that you can escape from. And so, yeah, there is pressure on you to be at your very best all the time. I don't know, like, if you agree with that statement or not.
Yeah, it's an underlying nagging concern of most dads or guys of an age. And it's not just, you're an in-betweener. Most of my friends who I grew up with were in betweeners. You've got aging parents as well, and you've got youngsters to look after. You've got responsibilities both ways. That's before you start talking about what you're doing for a living, if you've got a partner or not. And trying to maintain some sort of identity and having something you do outside of that, family and work, which keeps you who you are. And all of these things need attention, and without the sort of health to do that, it starts becoming harder. And when you are an in-betweener, it becomes a lot more clear that you're going to have to keep that level at a level to be your best. So it's just, when you're in your 20s as a guy, you're not thinking about how long you're going to last or how you're going to look after people, because the person looking after is you. But when you see your parents aging, or there's only one of them left, or you see your child about to enter the age where they're approaching some form of independence or starting to ask more questions, if you are in that moment of slowing down physically or mentally, then the six-pack becomes irrelevant. Absolutely. And that's why, I hear it a lot, and they're almost like they're talking to a coach and they're thinking, let me just tell this guy that in case he's thinking that I want to look like that, I don't. And these are guys who come to me and they haven't seen any of my content. Someone's recommended them, and they say, before we go any further, I don't need massive guns. What I'm looking for is, and they basically tell me the stuff which I hear every day because I'm targeting that kind of person. And it's deep, and so there's a lot of job satisfaction in helping people get something which is a deeper why, and something which you're hoping is going to sustain them for longer. And it's almost in reverse now. When I get someone who does really well aesthetically, I have the fear that they're going to sort of still be maintaining that down the line. I'm thinking, did I spend long enough building those habits so they're not going to lose this? Whereas when I get someone who's had looks like a modest skull, but they give me feedback and I know this because I took this quote and I put it on my website, and it's something that I can use his real name because it's on my website, Andy. And he literally said, I feel like I have the tools now to maintain the results we've achieved. And I was like, oh my God, I could have written that myself, and I would have written that myself, but I didn't make it up. You wrote it, and I've got the thing written on, and I'm going to kind of screenshot that and put it on there. Because, yeah, man, because it's true. And then I look back at this guy, and I check on him every now and again. He's not kind anymore. He's gone through the process on the back, and he goes, how you doing? Yeah, good, man. Didn't shape? Yeah. Yes. It's like, come on, yeah. Because he kept it going, and it's almost like, yeah, habits, building those foundations works. I don't want to get people in great shape and then check in on them after we've stopped talking and it all comes back. What is the point? What is the point? The point is longevity. The point is lasting longer. It's about looking good, yes, but also feeling good for the long term. If you can't do that, then it's just like all a big waste of time. I don't want to be doing stuff which is a waste of time. And deep down, neither is anyone else. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I haven't just worked with dads who want to get lean. If you're going to try and get into a wedding dress and you want to look a certain way, yeah, that's a very specific goal, But even that person doesn't want a balloon afterwards, You might do certain things to get them into the dress, but then if you're training with someone like me, you're saying, all right then, can we keep this, and this going? So that you maintain it a little bit and hopefully put some things in there which get you there. I'm not adverse to getting people into fantastic shape quickly. Of course I'm not. But I'm always thinking, are we doing things which are going to maintain it? Because that's what really matters to most people deep down.
That's very fair. That's very fair. This has been very insightful.
I hope so.
I mean that.
I'm just shooting the breeze. I don't, even when I am being very organized, I never have a script. I didn't have my wedding groom speech planned. I just thought, here's 8 points. Freestyle that one, freestyle that one, freestyle that one, because it's come from there.
Cool.
You see, so I don't think I've ever worked to a script. So everything I've said is because I believe it. And if it's insightful, then good, because I'm talking to someone on the same page. And so and obviously if you're talking to someone who doesn't agree with anything, that's all good too, because then you can have a debate.
Well, I listen, and obviously I have other trainers, other coaches in front of me, and one of the benefits for me is I get to learn more about what you guys do, not just the actual tangible strategies, but also the mindsets that you move forward with. And there's always stuff in there that it's not part of what I am or what I do. So that's why it's always very insightful, because I'm like, yeah, I can see that if I had thought about it that way, if I had used that strategy, then I would have had a different outcome with this person and this person and this person. And so it's really useful for me to hear what everybody else is doing And that's one of the reasons why I asked that question of like, did it actually work, right? Because that's did it work? Because if it worked, then I'm gonna go do that, right?
Exactly. It's got to work. Ultimately, whatever you do has got to work. Otherwise, it's
Um,
just theory.
but yeah, you do get people that are like they're kind of regurgitating what sounds right, and they didn't necessarily get an outcome from that strategy because, or they might not even have implemented that strategy. They've just overheard it somewhere else, and it sounds like the right thing to say. So, I am genuinely curious to know what people are doing out there that they're seeing actual legitimate, tangible outcomes with people. So my own curiosity, which I'm sure many other people would be interested to know, like how do I actually make a positive change in my life, even if if it's at the physical level, which kind of like transfers over into everything else. So I really 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 appreciated you coming on and sharing all of that. You've been very sincere for sure and I expected nothing less.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we'll anyone who's listening this far, you can find Io's details in the description below. And I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Cheers.
Till
Hope
next
so.
time.
Till next time. Cheers.